What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at the Fossil Cup, and the team we're going to be taking a look at today is Togedemaru, Aqua Breed, PALDEAN, TAUROS, and Poliwrath. Now, I've actually taken a look at this team before on this channel, except I was kind of highlighting Togedemaru because of how well it played. But honestly, PALDEAN TAUROS really showcased its strength and its coverage against the meta. It's got fighting, water, and grass coverage for this meta, which hits basically everything for super effective damage, or at least neutral. So we're going to take a look at it today. Before we hop into the battles, a special thank you to the expert trainer members on this channel, Benny Hemlock, Dr. Green Mustache, and Soham Patil, as well as the legend trainer members on this channel, Big Burden, Andrew Pitten, Musachu, Noodleman, Speedster, Esteros, and Liminal Lagomorph. So huge shout out to those guys. Let's hop into some battles. All right, into the first match. Great lead. We've got Togedemaru into Samurott. Now, this is a great lead because I believe Togedemaru actually wins CMP. Even though our pacing is exactly the same. It takes 10 Fury Cutters, which is equal to 10 turns that it takes us to get to our Wild Charge, but instead I bait with a Fell Stinger, and I do grab a shield with it, which means I can actually outpace, but I'm still going to play to the CMP tie, and now I'm full sending the Wild Charge, hoping my opponent tries to call the bait, and they do. They let that go, and now in comes Credilli. Now Credilli definitely not an answer to a Togedemaru, because they are completely walled in this matchup. However, I have lowered my defense, so I'm just going to stay in. I'm going to let them pick up the knockout, and then I'm going to come in with my Poliwrath in the back. Grassnot does pick up the knockout here. In comes Poliwrath, and what's in the back? It's a Milotic. Now, Milotic will be met with a Dynamic Punch. The recommended moveset is Icy Wind plus Scald on Poliwrath in this meta. That is definitely not the way to go. You definitely do want to go for a Dynamic Punch just so you can hit neutral or super effective against the steals. That said, I end up catching onto my Tauros. We get the Surf catch, which is kind of interesting. Surf resisted. They could have gone for a wrap because it wasn't exactly a catch. They had time to react. But either way, able to make it to the Trailblaze before my Credilli gets the charge move. Credilli looks like they have just force quit the app. We are going to get the full double kick farm down, and we are able to take a game 1 win. Into the next match, bit of an awkward lead. We've got Togedemaru into Ferrothorn. Now, the reason this is awkward is both of us are completely walled. I mean, Fell Stinger is neutral here, but it doesn't do any meaningful damage, but it does boost our attack. So the way I like to play this one out is I like to go for 2 back-to-back Fell Stingers, and then once my attack is 2 times boosted, I can live 2 Power Whips and go for a Wild Charge. And Wild Charge will be able to pick up the knockout from half HP, believe it or not, once I've boosted my attack twice. So I'm going to let this second one go. Power Whip puts us into the red health, but instead my opponent makes a really nice play and they snipe with a PALDEAN TAUROS of their own, which gives them an energy lead, allowing them to make it to a Trailblaze on good timing. So here comes Trailblaze number 1. I am going to shield that up. I know the coverage of PALDEAN TAUROS because I'm running one on my team. I'm going to overfarm as much as possible, throwing right before my opponent makes it to Trailblaze number 2, and they are going to shield that up, and they're going to undertap the move. However, by undertapping, I believe I can get a full counter farm down here. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Get the full counter farm down, come out loaded with energy. Are they going to come back in with their lead? No, they're going to come in with a Poliwrath of their own. They've seen Dynamic Punch, so here it comes. We grab that final shield from my opponent, and now in comes PALDEAN TAUROS. So both of us running extremely similar teams. The only difference is I'm running Togedemaru and my opponent is running Ferrothorn. So we're going to see which variant is better. Now I'm going to connect with the Trailblaze. This is super effective damage, but it's not quite enough to pick up the knockout on the Poliwrath, and they actually make it to one final move. Now, is this the Dynamic Punch? No, it's a power-up punch, and that is not enough to pick up the knockout. In comes Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn now will be met with an Aqua Jet, and this will do some decent resisted damage. In comes the Poliwrath. We should have been able to get the counter snipe farm down there. They shouldn't be able to get a Bullet Seed plus the power up there. That is DRE, but we still are able to get the double kick farm down, and we can take that win. Decent lead in the next match. We've got Togedemaru into Carbink. Carbink, kind of an odd Pokemon to see in this meta. It just doesn't really have any play, just as a rock type. So I'm going to go for the Wild Charge and then pivot into my Tauros. Just getting some nice chip, putting it in Trailblaze range. But no, my opponent makes a catch of the Trailblaze onto an Araquanid, potentially going for the Aqua Jet catch, but I do not go for it. I'm just going to boost my attack. And the thing here is Araquanid is completely walled. Bug Bite is resisted, so is Bug Buzz, so is Water Pulse, and so is Bubble Beam. So even if they want to go for a resisted charge move, none of them will take me out from this range. And Bubble Beam, even though it does lower my attack, I'm running Trailblaze, so I can instantly boost my attack back up. In fact, my attack was already 2 times boosted, so back to 2 times boosted we are, and we flip switch, which is absolutely massive. In comes a Golisopod. Now, Golisopod might not know the counts of PALDEAN Tauros, so I'm going for an Aqua Jet bait, hoping I can make it to another Trailblaze. Can I get to the Trailblaze? It looks like the answer is no. They are going to get the full Fury Cutter farm down. In comes Togedemaru. I'm basically fully sacrificing it here. I'm thinking Poliwrath is my win con with 2 shields left in play. There's Aqua Jet number 1. Here comes Aqua Jet number 2. And at this point, my opponent is Energy Dry. So in comes Poliwrath. I'm basically just going to go for the full counter farm down. I will respect a potential aerial ace here in case they are running it, but as soon as they show me the Aqua Jet, I know that I don't need to shield another charge move from my opponent if they decide to shield this up, which they might if they want to try and grab a second shield, and that's exactly what they're going to do, but I'm not going to shield this because I know they're walled now, and I need to save my shield for that Moonblast on the lead. I'm going to go now for the full counter farm down. My opponent snipes with the Card Bank. I'm expecting this to be the Moonblast, and it is. I shield that up, but they get the 10% attack boost chance. Is that going to win them the game is the question. I'm able to make it to the back-to-back dynamic punches, looking like that was on the CMP tie. Dynamic punch picks up the knockout. Dynamic punch number 2 going to connect against the Golisopod. They did not have enough energy for a charge move, and that picks up the knockout on the Golisopod, and we are able to take the win. Into the next match, we've got Togedemaru into Credilli. Now, Credilli is a decent lead for us as well. The opponent safe switches into Golisopod. I'm going to farm up to the Wild Charge, and now I'm baiting with a Fell Stinger. They're not just going to let this go, but they do. My opponent apparently has their balls all the way down to their ankles because that is an insane bait call. But now I'm still in an okay position. I can now go full send the Wild Charge here. And pick up the knockout, but no, this time my opponent does get the shield call right, but even though they do get that shield call right, I believe I can still double shield and get the full farm down and then just align one of my Pokemon in the back. But now that I have no shields left in play, their Credilli, they show me they're on acid, which is good because that is double resist here, so I can go for a Fell Stinger into a Wild Charge on the CMP tie. My opponent doesn't fall for it. They don't throw on the CMP tie. However, this Wild Charge is still going to do massive damage, and I'm going to stay in because that forces them to throw their energy. Even though my defense is lowered, they still can't get the farm down, which is huge because now that they've thrown energy, I can come in with my Poliwrath, get the counter farm down. What's in the back? It's an Araquanid. And now this is fantastic because I can lower their attack now that they're switch locked, and then I can pivot into my PALDEAN Tauros where I can take these Bubble Beams no problem and then instantly boost my attack back up. So this is where we like to see it. We like to have PALDEAN Tauros on the Araquanids and Poliwrath on the Golisopods. That's how I prefer to align. But they actually go for the Bug Buzz. They get the lowering of the defense, which is pretty unfortunate. But that doesn't matter because we have such a pacing advantage in this matchup. Here comes a Trailblaze. We get the double kick farm down of the Credilli that comes back in, and we are able to take the win. Togedemaru into Lucario. This is a terrible lead. Going to have to pivot into my PALDEAN Tauros, and I am met with a Tinkaton. So terrible lead and terrible safe switch. However, we can connect with an Aqua Jet, and this is neutral damage. It does about 50% to the Tinkaton. It looks like they probably would be able to survive too if they wanted to. I'm going to try calling a bait here, hoping that they do go for the Bulldoze, but they full send the Play Rough, which is pretty unfortunate. But now in comes Togedemaru. I don't really want to take a double super effective Bulldoze, even though it isn't a great move. So I'm actually going to full send the Wild Charge, pick up the knockout, and then instantly pivot into my Poliwrath. They do have enough for a Thunder Punch here, so I actually will respect it because I don't know what is in the back. And my opponent shows me it is a Kingdra in the back, so a bold Pokemon to use in a Ferrothorn meta. But I am now just going to go for the Icy Wind, lowering my opponent's attack. I know I can survive an Octazooka, and this is only enough for an Octazooka here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up, I'm going to make it to the Icy Wind, and I'm actually going to go for an Undercharge here because I need to get to back-to-back Wild Charges on my Togedemaru, and I think that'll allow me to get there. But They live on 1 HP, making it to the Octazooka. I kind of have to respect this damage because Force Bomb would do too much damage in this matchup, and I think I can outpace because I have 1 residual past the back-to-back, and there we are. It takes 4 Force Bombs to get to a charge move, so here comes Wild Charge number 1. Wild Charge number 2, back-to-back, and this will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Lucario, and we are able to take the win. Into next match, we've got Togedemaru into Togedemaru. Mirror leads in this matchup. So how do we like to play this out? We like to build up to the back-to-back Wild Charge and then bait with a Fell Stinger. But my opponent throws right away, so I'm going to let this go. It is just the Fell Stinger bait. And now that I'm at the back-to-back, I'm going to go for the Fell Stinger bait of my own. But my opponent throws as soon as they get to the Wild Charge, and they actually full send the Wild Charge. That connects, but we have good IVs on the Togedemaru, living on 1 HP, able to make it to a Fell Stinger plus a Wild Charge, but my opponent catches the Wild Charge where it is resisted on a Gastrodon, but that doesn't look resisted. That does massive damage to the Gastrodon, putting them at about half HP, and now I know I can outpace. This is only enough for a Body Slam, so I can definitely just let this go, and having the alignment that we need is nice. Because their Gastrodon is not on our Togedemaru. I'm now able to make it to the Trailblaze on the Stampy tie with my opponent's next Body Slam. That picks up the knockout. Are they going to come back in with their Togedemaru, or are they going to come in with their third? They are going to come in with their third, and it is a Fortress in the back. So I'm going to go for 1 double kick, connect with the Aqua Jet, and now in comes Poliwrath. Poliwrath in a great position to sweep here because they are on Bug Bite. They do make it to a charge move here. I am going to respect 1 because I think they can only get to 1 Wild Charge on their Togedemaru, but I think I may have underestimated that. I have to go basically for the full counter farm down, and if they bait here, I think they're going to be able to make it to a Wild Charge. It's going to be close. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, they're just barely able to make it to only a Fell Stinger here, which is absolutely massive. It is the Fell Stinger. We can resist that. We counter farm down the Fortress, and we are able to take the win. Into the next match, a Shadow Scizor. So we've seen this Pokemon absolutely everywhere in Open greatly, but here it is in the Fossil Cup, and they're actually still on Bullet Punch. The recommended moveset for Scizor in this meta is actually Fury Cutter, and you're going to see why. Bullet Punch is just resisted on so many Pokemon in this meta, but I'm going to farm up to the back-to-back Wild Charges. Scizors love to bait, so I'm baiting with the Fell Stinger, and my opponent calls the bait. This is the second time that I've had my bait called. I don't know what is going on. Everyone is just calling baits here, and they're getting these bait calls right. I don't usually bait this much, and I usually bait when I'm almost sure that my opponent will let it, or will shield that, but 0 for 2 so far. But my opponent responds with the Jellicent, and that's exactly what we're trying to do with the Tauros safe switch. We're trying to bait out the Jellicent, maybe grab a shield like we did in this matchup, and now we can just let this go. Poliwrath will not have to see the Jellicent in the end game, which is absolutely massive because now in comes Togedemaru. Togedemaru able to get to the Wild Charge and pick up the knockout, and now I can instantly reset that onto Poliwrath in the back. And now in comes Gastrodon. Gastrodon over farming like crazy here, allowing me to get to the Icy Wind. This will lower my opponent's attack, and they are going to shield that up and going to instantly reset that onto their Scizor. But it does not matter because Scizor is unable to make it to a charge move. I'm already at a Dynamic Punch, so I can just shield this, go for 1 more counter to make sure it's in Dynamic Punch range, and Dynamic Punch from this range will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Gastrodon, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got Togedemaru into Poliwrath. So yes, Electric is super effective, but this is a terrible matchup because Counter is super effective and it does way more damage than Thundershock. So I will actually pivot into my Tauros. They do outpace me to the charge move, which means this is only enough for a power-up punch. And now here comes a super effective Trailblaze. The only difficult part here is if my opponent shields this, they can actually go for a full counter farm down. And while we have grabbed a shield, they're still in the green health. So in comes Poliwrath. They end up pivoting into a Scizor. Now this Scizor is also on Bullet Punch, and they only farm up to a potential Night Slash here. So I'm actually just going to let this go. It is resisted damage. That allows me to overfarm here, go for the Icy Wind right before they make it to Night Slash number 2. And Icy Wind, despite its resistance, will be enough to pick up the knockout on the Shadow Scizor. What's going to come back in here? Is it going to be the Poliwrath, or is it going to be their third? It is going to be their third, and it is a Ferrothorn. Do they expect the Dynamic Punch, and are they willing to go down 2 shields in this matchup? They let it go. That connects. That is massive damage. In comes Togedemaru. They're going to throw energy here. I know this is only enough for a power-up punch, but I think power-up punch would do too much damage here after the counter. So I am going to shield that up. I'm going to go for the full Thunder Shock farm down, but we get the simultaneous KO. Counter versus Bullet Seed. Counter gets the farm down, and we are able to take that win. Into next match, another Shadow Poliwrath lead. This is a tough lead. Going to do the exact same thing. Safe switch into my PALDEAN TAUROS. But this opponent is going to safe switch out into a Lantern. Now, Lantern will be met with a super effective Trailblaze. This is why the coverage of PALDEAN TAUROS is so good into this meta. I'm able to make it to a second Trailblaze, but not before my opponent does throw their energy. But I want to at least grab a shield in this matchup or flip switch. So I am going to shield this up. Now I'm going to go for the Trailblaze. Trailblaze number 2 going to get shielded up by the opponent. Can I get to another charge move? I cannot. My opponent gets the Thunder Shock farm down. That's okay. I can take a Surf no problem on the Togedemaru. Yes, it's going to do a lot of damage. Probably put me in the yellow health range, and it does. But that's okay. We get the Thunder Shock farm down. Come out with the Wild Charge loaded. This will do massive super effective damage to the Wild Charge, to the Poliwrath unless they shield and they let it go. Instantly going to reset onto my Poliwrath, and it's a Ferrothorn in the back. The Ferrothorn now will be able to outpace, make it to the Power Whip, but I will just shield that up. And now I'm going to overfarm here, go for the Icy Wind on good timing. This will lower my opponent's attack so that they cannot pick up the knockout on the Togedemaru with one charge move, and they're going to be forced to pick up the knockout here unless they go for an undercharge and try and farm me down. But after the Icy Wind debuff, they don't even get the Power Whip knockout, and I am able to get the counter farm down, and we are able to take the win into the final match of the video, picking up a good lead finally. Togedemaru into Lantern. My opponent safe switches into Glacepod after having my bait called twice. I'm not baiting anymore. Here comes a Wild Charge. Do they respect the damage? They do. And now in comes Poliwrath. I kind of explained why I like to align Poliwrath into Glacepod versus Tauros into Arachnid, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. My opponent ends up going for the Scizor. Always go Aqua Jet if you're the Glacepod in this matchup. If you're not running Aerial Ace, it is just a better damage per energy move. That said, I'm able to make it to the Dynamic Punch, outpacing my opponent to a third charge move. That connects, it puts them in one counter farm down range. And now, are they going to come back with a Lantern? They are, but Lantern will be met now with a Dynamic Punch. This will do some pretty sizable damage to the Lantern, but they are going to let that go, being a shield down already. I can come in with the Togedemaru. In comes an Arachnid. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to overfarm pretty significantly here and now going for the Wild Charge. This will do massive super effective damage, so my opponent once again respects it, and now in comes PALDEAN TAUROS. We've seen this matchup before. I can just let this go. Anything is resisted. It's a Bubble Beam bait, and that does not matter because here comes the Trailblaze, instantly boosting my attack back up. Arachnid just can absolutely not gain any ground in this matchup, and having everything resisted is just so good in this matchup. They go for another Bubble Beam, but that does not matter. Maybe just trying to burn the switch clock, but it doesn't matter because here comes a super effective Trailblaze against the Lantern. I can just let them throw here. I'm just going to stay in, let them pick up the knockout. Maybe they were expecting a snipe with the Togedemaru, and they were. They went for a Surf, but now I can just absorb that damage, come in with my Togedemaru, make it to the Wild Charge. My opponent knows this, so they just resign the match. But yeah, that is PALDEAN TAUROS. I don't know how much Fossil Cup I'm going to be playing this week. It was honestly kind of boring, and I honestly wasn't really gaining any ground with it. But PALDEAN TAUROS is extremely strong. So if you have this Pokemon, definitely worth giving it a try. This is the only meta where it's ever going to be viable, most likely. So try it while you have the chance. If you don't have this Pokemon, as I said in my top teams video, it doesn't really have a replacement. So the best thing I think you could do is actually run a reverse order of this team. I would honestly recommend running a Poliwrath lead, a Steelix safe swap, and either a Togedemaru or a Ferrothorn in the back. That's kind of what I would recommend. Or I guess you could use Quaquaval as a safe switch, because honestly, you can punish the Galacipods and the Arachnids because they are completely walled, and you have super effective Aerial Ace plus Wing Attack. So you could run Quaquaval, but it just doesn't have the exact same performance that you would expect out of Tauros with that coverage. And it is a little glassier, even though it does have that Hydro Cannon coverage. I would honestly not even run Hydro Cannon, which is kind of unfortunate if you just use the community day, but I wouldn't TM it off. I would just use a separate Quaquaval. But yeah, that's going to be it for me from this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.